Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you, Julie?
I am great. How are you?
Not too bad. Not too
Nice
bad.
to meet
Hanging in
you.
there.
Yeah.
Thank you. There's Jenny Mason even. Whoa. Whoa. That's awesome. How are you, Penny?
Good. I was not paying attention. I was texting my son.
You know, the live engagements are such a weird thing right now because
Oh,
it's
I
like,
know.
wait, there's actual time to show up to something? It's so weird.
Well, there have been, like I said, there have been positives in the Zoom thing, but I do miss live three-dimensional people.
Amen.
So
Jenny Mason.
Good morning, Julie and Jenny.
Morning,
Good-
everybody.
How
Jen,
are you?
are you the introducer this week?
I am the introducer, yeah.
Okay.
Even though it says Christy, she's not really up to introducing.
Oh.
Well, that's between you two. I'm not getting in it.
Yeah.
Yeah. She could
Sometimes
do
you're
it.
up for it. Sometimes she's up for it. Sometimes she's not.
Yeah,
She's definitely been known to introduce before, though.
yeah, that's true. That's true. So, Peter, how many were at the drive-in today?
I didn't go. I didn't
Oh.
brave it.
Yeah, if you're not preaching, you don't have to go, right?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. It was definitely a little slick when I was moving about this morning, but
Okay.
hopefully it was smooth.
Okay.
We still have a service outside right now, Julie and Jenny, out at the drive-in, the Hilltop Drive-In movie theater. And we haven't stopped since last Memorial Day.
I can't believe you're still doing it at this time.
Oh,
So
you should have been there for
nothing's
Christmas
gonna
Eve.
stop us.
Christmas Eve was very chilly, but well worth it. Even
Good.
got outside of our cars and sang.
That's right.
That's awesome.
Yeah, now it's kind of like this badge of, I don't know. I want to say courage, but that's not it.
Honor.
BA Minnesotans.
That's right.
Willpower, and
It's
I don't know why
depart-
we didn't have it in there that we might cancel it.
If you can go fish in a fish house, you can be outside to worship.
There you
There you
go.
go.
It can be done.
Yeah. So I have a question, Julie. Do you need to work anything out with Peter about screen sharing or any of that jazz? You're all set?
No, I find it not easiest, but most simple and best just to have a conversation. Audio
Okay.
visual, especially through Zoom, can be so distracting. And I mean, like Penny, you were saying that in two-dimensional, it's so hard to engage with people, especially, if you're going through slides and so just more of a conversation.
Perfect. Whatever works for you. That's what I always say.
Yeah.
But we can help you in any way you would like as far as monitoring, the chat. If people put questions in there to kind of help with that and watch for people raising hands
Yeah.
or whatnot, because it's
For
a
sure.
lot to look at when you're also trying to do the information and answer questions. So
Yeah.
that's what we are here for.
Awesome.
And
How
I-
many people? So I've run meetings with like 50 to 60 people on them. I've run little Girl Scout meetings, and it's interesting how to do this dance through COVID.
I would say for the homeless stuff, we've been getting anywhere from 20 to 40 people. Not that
Nice.
many screens necessarily. A lot of screens
Sure.
have multiple people. We do record it if that's okay with you.
Of course.
And then I do know that people do go online and watch it afterward.
Great.
So there's a lot of stuff that happens at 11 o'clock on a Sunday morning
Okay.
for our folks. And so sometimes they have to choose, are they going to watch the service on TV on the local channel? And for some of our older population, that's what they like. because it's the big screen and they don't have to deal with the technology, but then they'll go on later and watch this. So,
Yeah.
so I did get a call from a member a couple days ago. She goes, I really want to see the Dietrich Bonhoeffer stuff, but I don't know how Zoom is. I don't have it. So I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to help her get it set up. When I have an iPad, she has a computer. So I'm going to call her tomorrow with some stuff and I'll see if I can walk her through it.
Good luck.
Put on your IT customer service hat for the
Yep.
day.
That is, I
Your
am not the
genius
member in my
Penny's
family.
Genius Bar. I like that.
No, that IT stuff in my house, my family goes to either of my brothers.
Yeah, but you're doing it though. I love it.
Yeah, I have the geek squad in my genetic makeups, I guess.
So anyway, Julie and Jenny, I was going to tell you just a little bit about what we've been doing in January so far. And this is the 5th Sunday in a row we've had a presentation for mainly our adult learners, as we call them now. And we've focused on homelessness for 4 of the 5 of them. We started out with a member of our church who's in charge of our mission outreach board, and she talked a lot about sort of the big picture and a lot about the accompaniment model of walking beside, and sort of like you do with the one-on-one approach to the folks in Anoka that you deal with. And so we've also heard from Tricia Kaufman at Solid Ground, and Solid Ground is like Stepping Stone, but they focus more on families, and they're in White Bear Lake. And then we've heard from Gabriel Claudus from Settled about tiny homes and sacred settlements, and how they're trying to learn from what they've done in Austin, Texas, and around the country, and setting up these tiny home communities. And they're focusing on what she's considering a sacred settlement. So it's usually attached in some way to a congregation, either on their property or nearby, and supported by mostly volunteers. And there's a pretty, what I would call, I don't want to call it strict, but they have a training program. They've got specific types of structures that they use, and they've got it pretty well worked out. And then we also had a presentation from a woman from Faith Lutheran in Forest Lake, and they're considering something in their, they have enough property to carve out a corner to maybe put in a sacred settlement of tiny homes. And some of the focus for that came from a veteran who wanted to see something like that happen. So they've done some fundraising to get that aspect going, but it's not going to be only for veterans. But so that's interesting, and how they're putting that together with the idea of a lot of community support. And then today, hearing what you're doing in Anoka and Washington County is going to be a good wrap up for us. So hopefully we'll have a good full house here for hearing about all of the different ways you're approaching this. But I'm going to do just a little intro of the 2 of you before we start, after all the people get here. But I just wanted to give you a little background as to what you're getting into. But anyway, what are you going to say, Jenny?
So I see I've been given host responsibilities. Sorry about that. And folks are in the waiting room, so I don't know who's letting people in.
Oh,
If you have the host responsibility, then
Go for it.
you would be letting people in. Yeah.
I can take it back though. I meant, I don't know if it must have been just the ENNY, because I think it was the ENNY of Penny and Jenny, that it would have gone. I should have given it to Penny, not Jenny.
I
That
was getting
ENNY
concerned.
totally threw
That
me
makes
off.
sense.
Do you want to give it just
Go for it, Annie.
Can you Actually, Jenny, can you just click on Penny's name and say, make host? Can you do that? Under
We'll see.
participants?
Well, I'm gonna do something. I'm gonna let folks in real quick,
Sure.
and then I'm gonna do that.
Great.
Yeah, I was a little bit wondering why no one else was coming in.
There they are. Good morning.
Welcome, everybody. We're already having some technology challenges, so sorry that some of you got let in a little bit late, but don't worry. We're going to be patient.
Peter, by clicking on Penny's name, I don't see how to make her host.
Okay.
Sorry.
Let me see if I can just.
I can keep doing it also. I don't, but.
In participants, can you click on her and make her host there?
Oh, sure.
See, now here's some of the beauty of Zoom. I see we have people that are down in Texas and Arizona.
I got it, Jenny.
Good. You
No
can just
worries.
answer it. And Hawaii. So we've got a Minnesota.
Don't forget
And, yeah,
Minnesota.
well, Minnesota's kind of a given.
Even a couple of
I thought.
Minnesotan folks.
So we've got, you know, about 4 states.
We don't have enough visual here, though. We need to see these folks. So show your faces, please.
Suntans and all?
Yeah.
Roger, we want to see what that sun has been doing to you in Hawaii. Oh, you're so dark, I can hardly see your skin.
Welcome, everyone. So happy you're joining us today.
I guess Roger decided not to show his face.
Well, it's pretty early over there, you know.
Yep, it's 7 o'clock here.
Well, we're glad that you got up to join us.
Wouldn't miss it.
Hi, Jenny. Congratulations on your new job.
Thank you.
So I just want to mention that if any of you are signing on today and not getting my weekly email reminder, I usually get it out on Saturday, and would like to be on that list so you just get that extra notification, feel free to send me your email, and it should be in the Trinity newsletter and stuff. You can find it there, and I will get you added if you want, or if you're sick of hearing from me, I can take you off. But you know, I got some pretty hot information sometimes. So heck, while we're waiting, I'll just give you a little preamble. Next week, Lene Olson and her husband have been over to Israel, and they have connected with missionaries there. I'm not going to even attempt to pronounce their last names, but they are working. It is Gabby and Megan, and they are working with the ELC Global Mission in Israel, and they're working along with the ELCA and the Palestinian church there. And they are going to join us and share their mission over there and what they are doing, and kind of give us some insights about what it's like to live in that area and other things like that as well. So really excited to have them being willing to join us and give us some insights from a different perspective of what it is like to be over in Israel, especially in a Palestinian Christian area. So it should be very interesting. And that's going to be next week. And then after that, we have 3 weeks of fabulous guest speakers to lead us in learning more about Dietrich Bonhoeffer and his theology and how it relates to our world today. So we've got some really good stuff coming up. Yeah, let's see, what time is it? So usually I wait till about 5 after to go. So we got about 1 more minute, but it looks like people have probably pretty much come in. I'll keep watching to make sure that if others want to join us, I'll let them in. As usual, if you have, when there's a presenting, if you can be on mute, if you have questions, you can go ahead, put them in the chat or raise your hand. I will try to watch and monitor for Julie so that she doesn't have to necessarily pay attention to all of that when she's answering questions and telling us more. So Jeff, since you are doing introductions, I will let you start that and go ahead and introduce Julie.
Okay, well, now that John is here, I think we should be able to start. Glad you can join us, John. And I enjoyed saying that. Anyway, I want to welcome all of you to the class, but especially I want to welcome Julie Jeppson, who's our presenter today. She's from Stepping Stone Emergency Housing in Anoka, and they have a ministry of care to homeless folks in that area that are in emergency temporary housing in a repurposed hospital building, I believe, which I'm sure Julie will tell us about. And then Julie also works with our Washington County people that are homeless and being housed in hotels, and she's coordinating that with Jenny Mason, who's here today as a guest. And Jenny was our partner last winter. Trinity and St. Andrews and some other churches joined together to do a emergency winter warming space and shelter for a 10-week period. And that was our first really hands-on experience with this ministry, which Julie and Jenny have had as a lot more intense work on. So we hope to learn more from them, but we welcome Julie to be our presenter today, and look forward to hearing what she has to say. But I've gotten to know her through a few Zoom connections, and know that she's very approachable. So if you've got some questions, I'm sure she would be happy to address them, even though it might not have been in her presentation, but she's very knowledgeable. So take it away. Thanks.
Thanks, Jeff. Thanks, everyone. Yeah, we'll I guess in the next hour, you'll learn how knowledgeable I am. Obviously, this issue is incredibly significant. And I mean, Jenny, you've been in this work for a very long time, decades maybe. And there's still so much that we all learn every single day about what our neighbors and what our community is working through in this thing called homelessness. I do want to make mention that one of my staff, Jeff Connor, is also on this meeting. So you see his name and wonder who the heck he is. That's Jeff. So he works with Stepping Stone and me in developing our partnerships through these communities in which we serve. So thank you again so much for inviting us to participate in your 5-week series. I commend you and thank you for taking this cause up and prioritizing it because it really does affect each and every one of us, even though we ourselves may not be experiencing homelessness nor will ever experience homelessness. And it's only through us joining forces together, can this issue and this crisis be worked through, and significant changes can be made. So my approach to this morning is going to be a lot on education about who Stepping Stone is, how the overarching homelessness came to be, where are we now, and where do we hope to go. So if that sounds all right with you, I'll just let you know a little bit about who Stepping Stone is, just as a brief introduction. So Stepping Stone has been around for over 10 years. In 2008, we developed our 501c3 nonprofit status. We were founded by some very generous hearts and compassionate hearts through Anoka County and St. Stephen's Catholic Church, actually down in Anoka. Now, the interesting thing about Stepping Stone is that we are the only homeless shelter in the 5 counties of Anoka, Washington, Dakota, Scott, and Carver. In those 5 counties, we are it. Which, when you think of the geography of those 5 counties, that is a massive amount of space with a very, very small shelter. We are located in Anoka, and as Jeff mentioned, we occupy a building on the former state mental hospital grounds. And so the state sold that campus to Anoka County. And so the other buildings on that campus house kind of corrections type functions that the county provides to the community, in addition to us. We, pre-COVID, housed 66 men, women, typically 20 women and 46 men. At a bare minimum for our shelter, we offer an address. And why that's unique is because a stereotypical homeless shelter, opens their doors at night and asks people to leave during the day. We are 24/7. And because we're 24/7, we allow residents it's their temporary permanent home. They live there. They have an assigned bed there. They have closets and space and storage to make it their home for a short amount of time. So, and what that address does, it allows them to get mail, which might seem kind of simple, but for a human being to get mail is essential. You have mail for a bank account. You have mail for government documents. You have the ability to open a bank account, to apply for housing, just a simple address opens so many doors for you. But in addition to that, because we're 24/7, it allows, honestly, our residents more opportunity for employment. So a stereotypical homeless shelter that closes its doors during the day, people then can't sleep during the day. And you're thinking, well, why would they want to sleep during the day? That's not right. Well, if they want to do shift work, if they are able to do a 3rd shift in a manufacturing plant or a potato chip factory, it just gives them the option, more options. And right now, for those experiencing homelessness, pretty much all of their options have been taken away. In addition to all the basic needs, everything that you and I did this morning, maybe you put a load of laundry in the washing machine, eat breakfast, got dressed, took a shower, all of those things we provide to our residents at 0 cost. The payment in return that we expect is for them to work on themselves and help us in resolving their homelessness. We give as much back to our residents as they will put the effort into resolving their homelessness. There are many, many, many things that I have learned over the 8 years of being employed with Stepping Stone. And one of the best many things that I've learned is we cannot do the work for our residents. They have to work for themselves to better their lives. Now, we will give them every resource we have to support them in that journey, but they need to want it themselves. So, sorry, I have some notes down here so I don't lose track. So I, like many of you, will never know what it is like to be homeless. I have the privilege to not have experienced that, to have had the support of my family and friends, that when crisis does come about, I can rely on them. I can rely on my neighbors. I can rely on my family. I can rely on my faith. And like many of you, that is the real answer to us never experiencing homelessness. Now, when I was at church, maybe it's been, gosh, maybe 10 years now, the pastor said, if you think of 5 people that if you had a crisis, who are those 5 people who you would go to? And I'm sure all of us are just thinking of all these different people. Well, for our residents, they can't think of even one. And so when crisis hits, what happens? And most often what happens is a cycle and a downward spiral, ultimately hitting rock bottom of homelessness. Now, along that spiral down can be drugs, can be unemployment, can be a medical crisis. And when you have all of those things compounding in that downward spiral, you have a very traumatized, broken, chaotic human being. And so for Jenny and Jeff and I, that's where our residents come in. And that's the type of individual that we're dealing with. So the twists and turns of homelessness are immense, but resolvable, absolutely 100% resolvable. And again, together we can make that change occur. So how have we gotten to this point? I don't know, for many of you, even for myself, this crisis was never as impossible as it is today. Back when a number of you were children, did you ever hear of a homeless shelter existing? I'm sure there were people on the streets and your stereotypical individual who, you know, had a jar and was asking for change, but never before has it been such to the level and crisis that it is right now. And so what is absolutely fascinating is we partnered with a gentleman named Josh Hayes last year, at the end of last year, who had created a documentary about 10 years ago, really focusing and dissecting what is actually going on with the homeless community and why this is such a problem. And I really, really recommend that if you are interested in digging deep in this and understanding at a very high level what is going on, I really recommend you watch this documentary. It's called The Invisible Class. And there are very, very few documentaries about homelessness, but Josh took it to a different level and really pinpointed the issue and what's actually going on. And there's so many things and so many years and so many tragic milestones in our world and primarily our government that exacerbated this issue and basically created a systematic problem of not being compassionate to human beings. But the ultimate straw that broke the camel's back was between 1978 and 1982, when the federal government reduced almost to zero the amount of money that they invest in affordable housing. So in 1983, what we know as the homeless shelter system actually was created. And also at that time, which is very personal to the campus in which we are located, is when the state mental hospitals started to deinstitutionalize. And so there are still mental health institutions out there, but they are very few, and they don't even come close to filling the need that is out there. So when the state hospital closed, when our campus closed, and they discharged people, they had no plan, and those individuals had nowhere to go. So the only option was the streets and encampments. And hopefully families and friends who had never taken care of these individuals, nor did they know how to take care of these individuals, who many of which were very, very ill. And so back in 1983, the emergency shelter system was created. Over time, over decades, the issue got worse and worse. Economies changed, booms and busts occurred. So what's happening now? So in late 2019, and kind of why I'm here and kind of why Jenny and I now work together, in late 2019, staff with Washington County put out a request for proposals because Jenny and her team saw that the need of emergency shelter in the suburbs was dramatically increasing, and where we saw it the highest and a huge spike for Stepping Stone was in 2008, 2012. Around that time, if you can recall, there was the bubble burst for the housing market. And those who are living in poverty or on the brink of poverty on that line were hugely impacted by that burst. And so our county and Stepping Stone saw a dramatic increase in the need for shelter services. Over that same amount of time, Jenny and all of the counties within those 5 that I mentioned to you have been consistently seeing an increase in the need for shelter for your homeless. But in late 2019, Washington County had put out a request for proposals, which Stepping Stone answered in early 2020, saying, yes, we would love to partner with you in building or repurposing an already existing building and creating a static site, a permanent home as an emergency shelter facility. Well, we all know what happened in early 2020. Things changed very dramatically, almost instantaneously with the onset of COVID and COVID hitting the United States. So literally in mid-March, on March 14, life as we knew it changed. And so for us, working in this homeless industry had to change with it. And so what happened was significant government funding was just dumped into the homeless system because all of a sudden jobs were no longer there. Housing was very, very challenging. We were just getting through the winter, which is a very, very high increase for those experiencing homelessness. And everyone's shift around permanent shelter changed to hotels and motels. And so thankfully, with this influx of cash from the state and federal government, Jenny and her team were able to partner with 2 motels, one in Forest Lake and one in Stillwater. And so because the conversation with the request for proposal for a permanent site was already in place, we worked with Washington County, Jenny and her team and other staff over there to provide the services meaning case management, housing navigation, helping people fill out applications, helping people resolve that homelessness and get into permanent housing. It has been a dramatic learning curve. I'm sure Jenny would agree. But we are both experts in the fields that we know and are most helpful with. So the partnership has been going very well. And the goal, in my opinion, and based on conversations with others for 2021 and 2022 is to ultimately find that permanent site. Because one unintentional side effect of all of this money being funneled in by the state and the federal government for these hotel motels is it's not cost effective and it's not sustainable. For the hotel in Anoka, it costs one person for 1 month, $2,100 to live in a hotel. Just think of the power and the amazing impact we could have with $2,100 a month for one person. I mean, just thinking about the type of apartment you could rent right now for $2,100 a month is absolutely, it's amazing. I mean, that's far more than my mortgage is. So, so it's not cost effective or sustainable in the long run. So we need to come up. So we had to have this urgent solution. And now we're kind of stepping back and the issue isn't as urgent. And now we really need to think forward about what this is going to look like moving forward and into the future. Because I guarantee you, from what I've seen, the need for shelter is only growing. And there's a few reasons for that. But let me step back a little bit and let's talk about this thing called affordable housing. Affordable housing is really a thing of the past. Affordable housing doesn't exist. It doesn't exist anymore because by definition, affordable housing is paying housing that is affordable. You pay 30% of your income towards your housing. The clients that Jenny and I serve pay upwards of 75 to 90% of their income on housing. That is not affordable. And so specifically to Washington County, and I got these numbers from the Minnesota Housing Partnership. It's an organization that just collects data on all things housing. And it's a fascinating website. And I highly encourage you to go on their website to learn more specifically about what's going on in your community. It goes from the nation to the state to your county to city specifically in wages and employment and housing costs, all this kind of stuff. But specifically for Washington County, between 2000 and 2017, rental rates increased 25%, while wages only increased 8%. So that gap between the growth in housing costs and the minimal growth in wages, that's called the housing wage gap. And so for those who are only making 8% more, and hopefully making 8% more, they need to put more of their wages towards housing, right? And so for a person to rent a 1-bedroom apartment, they need to work 69 hours a week, minimum wage. For someone to earn enough for a 2-bedroom apartment, they need to work 80 hours a week. And that's just to afford rent. That doesn't include children, that doesn't include insurance, that it doesn't include food, it doesn't include clothing, it doesn't include all those basic necessities, let alone any kind of enjoyment in living this life. One of the biggest impacts on affordable housing that has yet to come is the lifting of Governor Walz's executive order and emergency order, emergency peacetime declaration. This is not political. I'm not even going to go there, agree with him or not. But when this declaration is lifted, evictions are going to start. And when evictions start, the homeless crisis is going to be like nothing we've ever seen before. And so I know a number of us are preparing for what this is going to look like. And the preparation that needs to happen is the increase in shelter beds. The increase in the economical way of providing shelter and services to individuals, because this is going to get bad very quickly. Another massive change that is coming our way is that our population is aging. I think very recently, if it hasn't happened yet, it's going to happen in the very near future, is that those 55 and older is going to outnumber those 18 and younger. And so for those of us who are getting to 55 and those of us who are past 55, you know that your ability to earn income decreases, your health issues dramatically increase, and your need for supports dramatically increase. Now, if you add on to that mental health issues, significant medical issues, zero opportunity for wages, zero planning for retirement, you have a population that is so going to need help, even more so than they already need right now. And so their reliance, those 55 and older, their reliance on the system that is broken right now or doesn't exist is going to be exponential. So that gets into healthcare. One of the things that the vast amounts of things that I've learned through all of this is housing is healthcare. Those who are experiencing homelessness have a 25-year less life expectancy than those of us who are housed. So if you think of the aging population and their medical needs, and the age in which they live is going to continually decrease, but the needs that they have is going to continually increase. And so that is going to put a real strain on our already strained systems. Does anybody have any questions so far? I really don't want to feel like I'm just talking at you and throwing all this information, this really doom and gloom information for you. Really, it'll get better. Yeah, Rita.
What was the website that you suggested that we go to look for that information?
Minnesota Partnership Housing. Minnesota Housing Partnership. Yep, mhponline.org.
Thank you.
You are welcome.
So one question I have for you is when you were talking about, when you get people into shelter and the model that you have that, it's 24/7, which is definitely an improvement to you're on the street, except for at night when you need to sleep. One of the things that we have heard is that people that are on the streets or homeless often are fearful of safety moving into shelter. Some of them because of this lack of sense of, well, at least in my tent community, I have a little community that I trust these group of people. How do you or us address something like that so they're willing to take that first step into a shelter where then maybe the resources that you have would be available for them to continue to move forward and hopefully getting, excuse me, sustainable housing?
Yeah, safety is a huge concern, and I think the reason why, a number of the reasons why individuals are concerned with their safety, rightly so, is because of that stereotypical shelter model, in that it's so transient. There's no records, very little records, excuse me, of who's coming in and who's leaving and who new is staying that day and who is leaving. And it's just a lot more chaotic, where when they come into a 24/7 shelter, we keep tabs on everyone. We know who's there. We have 24/7 security. We have staff who get to know people. We have run a background check on individuals. So we go off of a waiting list, and before they even come into the shelter, there's a lot of information that we know about an individual, because, for example, we don't allow any of our residents to be sex offenders, registered sex offenders, or to have committed a violent felony within the last 3 to 5 years. So there's a lot more that we do behind the scenes to ensure the safety of our residents. So that helps a lot. And two, it's just the education and understanding, and honestly, the word of mouth with our current residents to future residents, or, they stick pretty close together, and they do create their community. And so those who are used to a stereotypical shelter, talking to those who have stayed at Stepping Stone or are staying at Stepping Stone, they know that it's a far safer place. That the biggest hurdle for intakes that we have is just our location and how far away it is from Minneapolis and St. Paul, the jobs and the transit, which is a very big hurdle to overcome.
Someone else, thank you. Someone else had a question about what's the turnover rate? How long do residents normally stay?
So back in 2019, we're still collecting our data for 2020, but in 2019, we had 517 men and women, unduplicated individuals staying at the shelter. We had about 630 who were duplicated. That means about 114. Does that work out mathematically? About 114 who had left within that year and came back within that year. Now, what the number of times they left and came back, I don't know, but it's about 20% who leave and come back each year. And then what?
So how long are they? how long are they typically there?
Yeah, so we really, really want our residents to live at the shelter for at least 90 days. Uh, because like the first month, an individual is just getting acclimated to community congregate setting. And so learning to live with three other people in their bedroom, learning to share bathrooms, learning to do their chores, and you know that our rules are non-negotiable, and learning to live within a new idea of congregate setting. The vast majority of our residents leave. Well, not vast majority. I would say about 30% of our residents leave within the first 1 to 7 days of staying there because they just can't do it. They just can't live like that. That's not what they're used to. So if we can get someone to stay at least a month, then we hope that they can stay 90 days. But between 90 and 180 days, 3 to 6 months is really ideal. After 6 months, it's a really fine line because what we don't want, let me step back. So if you think of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you have the basic needs of food, shelter, water, clothing on the foundation. That's really the foundation. Well, I feel that there needs to be another added component to that foundation, and that is community. We all need community. We all need people. We all need a sense of belonging and people caring about us and people concerned about us. And so what we also give to an individual is that sense of community. And for those who stay past 6 months, we've noticed that they get that from stepping stone, which can also be not supportive because then they don't want to leave. They don't want to go anywhere. They have found their family and they have found their home, which is a great thing, but it then slows down their progress towards resolving homelessness. So then we really focus on shared housing options, like if they've gotten friendly and have gotten support and, you know, become friends with other residents, we really focus on those individuals moving out together so that community can stay with them when they leave.
Thank you. Let me see. There's another one here. A couple of them. One is, what medical care do you provide at your shelter model or facilitate access to? And somebody answered, emergency shelter in Ramsey and Hennepin all do intake, case management, and know who is staying with them. Shelters accept people through coordinated systems. Okay. So I guess the medical care one is first.
So pre-COVID, we had a line of professionals, doctor, nurses, drug counselors, donate their time 1 day a month to come in and provide current and preventative healthcare needs. We have a room in our shelter that is a clinic room and has all the essentials for basic checkups. That doctor would prescribe medication, even on occasion would go to the pharmacy and pick up the medication for the individual. When COVID hit, that stopped. Also, when COVID hit, seeing your doctor face-to-face stopped. So we had to very, very quickly install technology, Wi-Fi, and purchase tablets and laptops for our residents to get their telehealth, both medical, mental, primarily medical help and mental help from their doctors that way. And so that's how we provide the technology, we provide the private space for them to have those appointments. I don't know if Alina will ever come back into our shelter. If they do, it's probably going to not be for another year or so.
There's one other question about volunteer versus employed base for supporting your model there for the shelter.
Yeah, so years ago, we were very heavily volunteer supported. That's just kind of the go-to for nonprofits because you don't have the operating budget to fund staff, because for any business, staffing is the most costly expense. But over the years, I've slowly turned away volunteers because and increased our staffing a lot more because individuals who are working with those experiencing homelessness need to be consistent and they need to be trained. They need to be trained in conflict resolution. They need to be trained in boundaries and establishing those boundaries, and just really working with an individual who's experiencing homelessness and in crisis really takes a special kind of person. And for our shelter specifically, it just, our layout and our programming isn't conducive to having large groups of volunteers come in. So we very specifically said, where can our volunteers be the most impactful and make the most, make the biggest difference in both the residents' lives and their own lives, because we all volunteer, you know, to give back, but in giving back, we also receive in return. And so they're very specific, you know, working our cafeteria, working in our front office, working in our clothing closet, those activities like that. But with COVID, that stopped, because with COVID, we were no longer allowing non-residents and non-staff into the building. We're slowly bringing that back, which is nice, and limiting the number of volunteers at one time to come in. So we currently, because we're open 24/7, we're staffed 24/7, we have about 25 full-time staff, where the vast majority of those are called shelter advocates. And they are on a shift rotation of working 12-hour shifts, no more than 3 days in a row at a time. It's this huge rotating shift schedule. And so those individuals provide a lot of the services that our volunteers used to. And it's just something that we had to do because we no longer could accept volunteers into the shelter.
Any other questions for Julie right now? If anyone has one that you want to shout out, go ahead.
I know R.O. Anderson at strategicCC.com, shelters accept people through a coordinated system. There are some shelters who go through this system called coordinated entry. We do not. We go off of our own internal wait list. And so we are able to do those background checks and know who's coming in prior, and are able to work through our own system that way.
So I take it you just do individuals, you do not do families?
Correct. Individuals 18 and older. We have had situations where we have husband and wives, but we have the women on one wing and the men on the other wing. And so we don't have a private room that married couples can stay together. And we also have had mothers and their sons and fathers and their daughters. And they also have to stay on opposite sides of the wings. The one thing that we are noticing is that we have trackable numbers of those transgender in the LGBTQ community. And how we work with those individuals is we take the direction on which wing they feel most safe and most comfortable on. And so we assign them to those wings depending on those answers.
What about, especially during this COVID time period, do people who are dealing with domestic abuse show up more to yours, or do they go somewhere else? Do you see more of that?
We have not seen a significant increase in those, in primarily women who are a survivor of domestic violence, but that is also self-disclosed. We partner with local DV shelters and counseling organizations, and typically we would get referrals from them to house a man or a woman, but we haven't seen a significant increase in those numbers.
Thank you. Anyone else right now? Otherwise, I'm sure you have more for us. Oh, someone
Penny,
said
I'm
something.
wondering, I'd love to talk a little bit more about how Stepping Stone is working in Washington County. I wonder if we can kind of pivot to that, Julie?
Absolutely. Yeah, take it away, Jenny, if you'd like.
Go for it.
Yeah, so with the COVID with COVID, Washington County started shelter work in April. And as Julie mentioned, we started renting rooms at 2 hotels. America's Best Value is the one in Stillwater on Highway 36, and then one in Forest Lake. And the homeless outreach services team that Trinity knows well from last year's warming space was responsible for running that. And frankly, it was just overwhelming them. And Washington County reached out to Stepping Stone. And as Julie mentioned, because we had already been working with them, it was easy to bring them in, but that took until September, right? And since that time, I would say we've had better outcomes because we've had a better staffing and more consistency and that sort of thing. So we have served at this point, I think 90 households. We have 50 households in shelter right now. And I speak about them as households because we do serve many couples together. Now, the interesting thing about hotel rooms, right, is that everybody has their own room, their own bathrooms together, and not have to split people by genders, which frankly is something that keeps some people from accepting shelter, right? So 90 households we've even served. I couldn't tell you the complete number, but currently at this time we have, I think, 7 families in shelter. So even though in Washington County we work with St. Andrews to do family shelter, there are some families that for whatever reason come to us first, or St. Andrews was a little slow in getting their doors opened again, and their capacity is different. So we've asked Stepping Stone, and they've had to move into that space as well to serve families, because it's kind of what we've needed in Washington County. But obviously that's just a percentage. I'll say because of COVID and everything that Julie said about the lack of affordable housing, even the eviction moratorium means that there's less housing than normal. And even so, 40 to 45% of those who have been in shelter with us have left shelter into permanent housing, which I think is really a tremendous statistic. And that's one that has definitely increased the longer we've been doing this. And just to share one more piece about that, of that percentage who have left shelter into permanent housing, half of those have had to leave Washington County because they couldn't find affordable housing in Washington County, right? It makes sense, but they've gone to St. Paul, they've gone to Dakota County, and then some to Anoka, but that's kind of the general where those who have left have had to go to find housing that they can afford. So at our shelters in Washington County, we work with 2 full-time Stepping Stone staff, a case manager at each hotel, and then a wonderful program director who spends, and Julie, you'll have to help me, is it 20% of her full-time equivalent with Washington County?
Yeah, 20.
Something like that. And then Julie's administrative time. So it's a pretty skinny staff still for serving 50, 20, 25%. It's a pretty skinny staff for serving so many households, but I think it's working well. Then the other piece of that obviously is that we're in a hotel where we're renting staffing as well, right? They're not there to monitor our residents or anything like that, but of course they're monitoring the safety of their property, and so we do hear about some things through them. But I think it's shown me in this work around what homelessness looks like in Washington County. It's shown me that there's a true need for us to stand up an adult shelter. And again, that's what Julie, that's how our relationship with Stepping Stone started, because we were seeing that need. And I would say COVID-19 has proved that need, and because we've had the capacity to offer shelter. So at this time, we have a group that is, so the model we're hoping to establish in Washington County is a 24/7 shelter. We do think that provides the best response to homelessness. We are also hoping to make that shelter, our intention is to make it as housing first as possible. And housing first is a philosophy that says you need to lower the barriers for people to come into shelter people. And, I could tell you so many stories of people, who won't come into shelter because they feel like that's not them, right? Just even that word shelter evokes a reality that doesn't feel like their own. So we need to make, and the hotels aren't homeless only. The hotels, we rent rooms in the hotel, right? We rent about half of each hotel, and they can have private guests. But housing first means that, for instance, if people are couples, right, we hope in the future that we don't have to separate them. If people have a pet, which is also another reason people reject shelter many times, that pet is part of their family. We hope to be able to accommodate that. In one of the two hotels, that is possible. We want to create the conditions that make it easy for people to take that step into shelter, because one of my mantras is that shelter is not housing, right? I don't ever want that temporary piece to become what people aspire to long-term. I want them to get into permanent housing where they're able to live with others or on their own, in their own housing. So shelter isn't housing, but shelter, for me, most of the time is the path to housing, right? Because you come into shelter, you get a bit of a respite from that crisis that you're living through. You can breathe, right? You can take that time to kind of be able to think again. How many of us can think well when we're in crisis, right? And you can begin to identify those barriers that are keeping you from moving on with your life, and then get support for dealing with those. Now, here's where my mind works. I want to talk about strengths-based work, right? And that we're taking time to get to know people and know what their strengths are and what they can work on. At the same time, people have very real barriers that we can't downplay. Maybe that barrier is a form of eviction, right? If they've got an eviction on their record, that even if it is expunged from their record, which there's some great work going on to do that, that landlords can still see it, that at one time they had an eviction. And that will, when landlords can be choosy in a market that's very slim, 2 to 3% vacancy rates, if you've got an eviction, it's extremely, extremely hard to get housed. If you've got any kind of criminal record, very hard to get housed. And, we all look at those and want to provide safe housing. But frankly, the studies are shown that after about a 3-year period, whether you have a felony in your past or not isn't really a determinant of being successful in housing. So those are just some of the barriers, right, that people face. So in Washington County, what we are hoping to do is stand up a single shelter. I try to call it as an adult shelter, right? Because even though couples are often the hardest folks to house in shelter, because let's face it, as couples, we sometimes fight with one another. It's, I think, you know, people come, our couples, I don't want to separate them, right? So rather than a single shelter, an adult shelter in Washington County, we think 30 is the right number. My firm belief is that once we can kind of get on top of this, we create a good inflow into shelter and outflow into housing. We've been right behind the cue ball for quite a while on that outflow, but we are, you know, I would say every month we have about 4 people moving out of shelter into housing. So if we can do that, it will take, we would like to purchase a hotel. Hotels have really suffered during the pandemic, and many of them are considering selling their properties. A hotel would mean, you know, we don't have to do a lot of rehab to make that work. And frankly, my hope is that we are creating both a shelter with individual rooms, but also rehabbing some of the rooms in the hotel to create studio apartments where we could perhaps house those that are most difficult to house and give them a chance to develop a housing history and, you know, continue that longer term. So that's the big dream. It would be for anyone over 18, right? So it is not talking about a youth shelter, but if you're 18 to 24, it would be a place where you could also come in and be safe. We have a lot of details to work out. You know, we have to raise a chunk of money to purchase a hotel. A hotel could cost between, I don't know, $1.5 million to $3 million, probably 1.5 to 2.5, somewhere in that range, I think. We have to figure out how we can pay for services in a hotel, right? Because we would need to contract with an organization like Stepping Stone, hopefully Stepping Stone, that will continue this good work together. And we have to have money to be able to operate that hotel, right? The maintenance, the repairs, you know, paying the utilities and all those things. So I will say it is a big, big lift, but I think it is one that there's some really great energy coming around right now to do that. Some congregations, faith communities are already talking about raising money. There's a number of community members who have said, you know, I'm a retired 3M'er. I'd like to give money to something, you know, what's going on. You know, I'm concerned about homelessness in my community. It's, but I do think it will take a community working together. And that's the point we find ourselves at. I'm going to breathe now, Penny, and see.
All right,
if
so
we have
looks
questions.
says there's a couple new questions. You answered the one about
Yeah,
the
John, to your question about the number of homeless in Washington County after the emergency declaration ends. Yeah, I'm just saying, I think right now we don't know what the number of homeless will be in Washington County after the moratorium ends. One of the things that has been very positive about all the stimulus money that has been spread out across the country and that we have had access to in Washington County is that we've been able to help people with their bills, right? When they haven't been able to pay their rent. And those are payments that don't go to the individual, but they go to the landlord. So rent is being paid. We know obviously that isn't reaching everyone, but we just this week received another $7 million that we'll be able to support households in these kind of basic needs. Some of that will be spent on our shelter work, right? But most of it will go to pay rental assistance.
Thank you. Okay, the other question is Julie, does Stepping Stone provide meals? Do residents have a place to prepare their own meals?
Yeah, so in our shelter model, we provide 3 meals a day, we have continental breakfast, and then a hot and cold lunch options, as well as hot and cold dinner options with a snack at night. No, our residents do not have a place to prepare their own meals. One of the hurdles that we've had to overcome is, so we have pre-COVID, we had 66 residents in our shelter. In April of last year, we moved half of those into a hotel in Anoka. And so we got a crash course in case management and working with those living in a hotel in Anoka prior to the partnership with Washington County. So we had a lot of those learning curve situations overcome before we got into Washington County. So we provide those same 3 meals to our residents at both locations. And so we've had to kind of figure out the logistics of delivering that to our residents. Now, the benefit for the hotel is individuals have their own refrigerator and their own microwave. So as Jenny was saying, they have their individual space and their private space to live. And so they also have that to eat. Now in the shelter, we do have a cafeteria and certain designated hours in the cafeteria only where food can be prepared, served, and consumed there. So there's far more restrictions in the shelter for, you know, you can only eat lunch from noon to 1. You can only eat dinner from 5:30 to 6:30. So it's a little bit more structured, but it's what you kind of have to do with the congregate setting like that. And I do just want to close my comments with fully agreeing with Jenny on a number of things that she said, but primarily shelter is not the answer. It is one of many answers. And it is a good solution for a number of people, but not necessarily all. And so we want to create a program that will be person-centered, human-centered, and also community-centered so that we help the most in the best possible way. And again, shelter is just one of those solutions. It's one of the stepping stones, pun intended, to resolving homelessness.
Thank you so much, Julie. And I see that, wow, the time flew. I don't know about anybody else, but it sure flew for me. It's already noon, but thank you so much for coming today. And I think our homeless team will probably be talking to us more about, after all of these learning experiences, what might be possible as far as our Trinity community in connecting with maybe helping in this area of housing. And then I see you said, okay, can I pass on your email to this group if they have questions for you? All right, I will do that then. So if anyone has additional questions after, I'll send out Julie's email so she can answer your questions as well. Jeff, you were the homeless team host today. Is there any last words from you? You're muted. There you go.
There we go. No, I just want to thank Julie for coming all the way to Stillwater to join us today, and for Jenny for doing a little bit of teamwork this morning, but also for the teamwork that these two are providing to our really close to home homeless folks. And I think because of what we did last year in our warming space, many people in our congregation feel that need a little more acutely, and we don't want to let that feeling slip away because the problem, as we've heard from Julie, is more likely to increase in the short term than to be resolved. And so we need to be vigilant and find ways to stay engaged. And I am going to implore all of you to try to pay attention to what's going on, find a way to participate in any of the areas that we've talked about in the last 5 weeks. See if there's a fit for you. And if you do have questions about what Julie or Jenny said, direct them to us or to them, but be prepared for more information from us coming forward. We're working hard to come out of the COVID cocoon at about the same time as the rest of the world does, with some specific and tangible ways that we can get involved. So what we've heard this month has given us a lot of inspiration, and Julie and Jenny, I want to thank you again for today.
Thank you so much. Thank you all for coming. I commend you for taking the time today to learn more about this, and I hope to see you next week for our guests from Palestine, Israel. So have
Jenny?
a beautiful, yeah.
What background does Jenny come from? What organization do you work with, Jenny?
I'm with Washington County now. I used to be at St. Andrews. I'm actually an ELCA pastor that is now kind of finding this career around homelessness. So
Oh, I
You're
recognize.
still an ELCA pastor.
I know. I just celebrated 30 years this month.
Holy
so
bucket.
Oh,
Woo!
no.
It's awesome.
Thank you.
Oldie but goodie, maybe.
And as always, this will be on the website. You need to give us, probably close to a week so that we can get it on there, so you can watch it again if you so choose, or share it with a friend, family, or whatnot. Spread the word. The more people learn, the more we can help. So
Thanks for your passion, everybody. Whoa.
all right.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
all. Thank you all. Have a good week.
Good to see everybody.